despite many differences in language and culture, we both have the saying in the UK and China, saving the best for the last, or 压轴 in Chinese. So today's 压轴 piece will be delivered by our wonderful Dr. Hailey Ma. I had the privilege to introduce Hailey when she hosted her panel session at the beginning of the Creative China stage yesterday. But for the sake for those who missed out yesterday's session, please allow me to also introduce Hailey Ma again here very briefly, who again I had the privilege to actually meet about almost exactly a year ago, where we shared a fantastic time singing karaoke together. I would definitely look forward to doing that again sometime soon, either virtually or physically. So without further ado, Hailey is an associate professor in performance and creative economy, international director at School of Performance and Culture Industries, University of Leeds. Hailey's research focuses on intangible cultural heritage in Chinese opera, culture and creative industries in global contexts. So Hailey was actually trained in traditional Chinese opera from her early teens, and she was a member of the Shanghai Luwan all-female Yue Opera Company before coming to the UK in 1987, where she pursued her academic career. Hailey is the PI of 2 AHRC ongoing grants in the space of UK-China partnership development in the creative industry, which she will be sharing with us now. So in the following session, Hailey will present two new short documentary films and a demo exploring the potential of using mixed reality performance to bridge Shanghai's rural and urban communities. Over to you, Hailey.
Well, thank you so much, Sylvia, for introducing myself. I will just talk a little bit about our project that I'm leading on. I have the great pleasure and luck to work with HRC and Shanghai Theatre Academy right from 2016, I think, when HRC first launched the IPS project, international, I think, scholar. I can't remember the full name, but it's IPS, and in collaboration with Shanghai Theatre Academy. I was one of the 4 young researchers at the time, studied and worked at Shanghai Theatre Academy. And from that period, I began to work with Professor Huang Changyong, or Changyong Huang, we put surname first, as Sylvia mentioned earlier, on the topic of creative economy in China. Professor Huang is the leading expert in creative economy in China. He was at the time working with BOP and producing a collected book on EU and UK, in particular, creative industries and case studies. And I worked with him on that, and the relationship and the collaboration spanned from there. So when HRC began to formulate a series of creative industries projects, including the 2017, the first UK-China collaboration forum, I was invited, and at the time we decided to work on a joint project looking at the transitional point of China from made in China to created in China, the industrial to post-industrial era. Can we unearth that part of the story, and it kind of in line with the narrative of creative industries in the UK. So with that as the background, we discussed it in 2017 at the forum, AHR's UK-China Forum, and in 2018 we put the bid forward, and that was the first AHRC bid, Newton Grant, on creative economy in China, and we obtained it. I am the UK PI, and Professor Huang Changyong is the China PI, also Nick Kay, professor in science specificity in X University, is the project CI. So that particular project was kind of the foundation of what we have been developing. And that project very much looks at M50, the first textile mill turned creative cluster, contemporary arts cluster, symbolizing the China entering point of redundancy as SOEs and state-owned enterprises, compulsory redundancy, or the shed of textile factory workers, and 550 million people were laid off. And then the rise of creative industries, digital economy very much started from there. The turning point was 2001. So our first project was to uncover that story and contextualize the missing part of M50, which is the voice of the textile workers who were laid off. But when they first developed the textile mill factory, the migrants moved from Zhejiang to Shanghai, brought with them Shanghai, the so-called Shanghai Yue opera, and developed in Shanghai to one of the largest, I would say the second largest, and the largest certainly in Shanghai, opera form amongst all female consumers, in particular working class. Since 2001, with further technological fashion development, and in particular Shanghai as the UNESCO creative city, further development hasn't been made for companies as well as textile turned creative industry clusters to attract new urban audience, middle class audience. So new fashion, new technology was put on further strength on how opera houses or popular theatre companies should evolve, and that became our next project, and very much the 2019 Seed Fund UK-China partnership, mixed reality of Chinese opera in urban and rural China, and then spent until 2020 the 3-year major fund on UK-China partnership, mixed reality of the Chinese opera in rural and urban Shanghai, bridging the gaps. So those are the process of how the projects have been built. But before I talk any further on what the current project is about, bridging the gaps, I do want to share 2 videos with the listeners or viewers, because they actually capture the essence of China transitional period from industrial to post-industrial, and how our project trying to capture the narrative of that transitional moment through the story of Yue opera and textile industry development from the industry to new fashion and technology. So if we could have the first video followed by the second one, please.
上海有深厚的历史文化底蕴和顽强再生的创造活力，它就是一个文化聚合的大熔炉。来到这里的外地文化会产生新的活力。最典型的例子莫过于粤剧在上海的繁荣。1917年，以原生墨为首的小歌班首演于上海。粤剧作为一种移民文化，开启了与上海文化互生互融的100年历史。
我们这是基础课，不是习课。这些东西习里面全要有基础课，所以呢，那个一定要练，不练的话就这个退步退得很厉害。
粤剧最初是浙江嵊县一带农村草台演出的戏曲形式，上世纪20年代称绍兴文戏。它吸收了京剧、绍剧的表演程式，向古装大戏发展。当时上海的外来人口以浙江人居多，浙江女孩来到上海后，或是选择去做纺织女工，或是去唱粤剧。1925年9月，上海演出广告中首次称为粤剧。之后，一些有名的演员几乎都汇集于上海。 1947年，由粤剧十姐妹联合义演的《山河恋》更是轰动上海。
越剧的发展是辣上海，也可以讲任何的剧种，侬要成名，侬要发扬光大弘扬，必定要到上海。一到上海嘛，侬这个姑娘唱了好嘛，来了呀，对吧？看个人不得了。
上世纪50、60年代是粤剧的黄金时期，出现了一批有重大影响的粤剧精品。那个年代啊，上海的大街小巷、公园里到处都有人在唱《梁祝》，工厂机关的广播喇叭里放的也是《梁祝》。作为当时的支柱产业，上海纺织业在体现上海对粤剧发展的影响上具有代表性地位。
1843年上海开埠以后，纺织业迅速发展，那么形成了我们现在一个国际化的大都市。就是一句话，纺织业叫什么？叫母亲工业。
我屋里时常还单歌自家唱，等到8点钟一上班了，一个高音喇叭就咣的就开了，下班钟一直要到5点钟下班。
随着上海高速发展，继续做劳动密集型的纺织业注定没有出路。
改革开放以后，我们朱镕基总理啊，当时的他提出了一个口号，叫全国压定1000万。在我们这家厂就是全国压定1000万里面的第一家企业，敲响第一声。我们有18位空少啊，他们到航空公司，上海航空公司做的就是空姐，各种各样的再就业。
直到上个世纪90年代的上海，新兴产业冲击并将取代传统产业，上海进入了产业结构大调整，而作为劳动密集型的上海纺织业首当其冲，有将近100万的产业工人面临下岗再就业。随着上海产业结构大调整，粤剧着眼于通过创新来重新吸引观众。在上海，它从老百姓的生活方式走上了与时尚和科技的结合之路，不破不立，大破大立。引领上海纺织走出发展困境的，正是当年转型时确立的科技加时尚战略。伴随上海时尚之都的建设，上海纺织在时尚领域大展拳脚。利用遗留的纺织用地和厂房，上海纺织打造了一系列时尚创意园区。M50创意园的原身为上海春明粗纺厂，于2000年起开始转型为艺术创意园区，成为上海的时尚新地标。在上海纺织100年老产业科技与时尚转型的今天，粤剧在上海的历史也有100年之久。粤剧在上海获得了更好的发展舞台，也随着上海纺织同步向科技与时尚转型。2017年10月，由上海粤剧院出品的小剧场粤剧《再生缘》首演于上海戏剧学院新空间剧场，一推出便好评如潮。沉浸式戏剧《再生缘》打破了镜框式舞台的限制，让演员与观众间的距离近在咫尺。此外，整个舞台空间都是由泛光性的材料组成，灯光布局打破了传统现实环境，凸显超现实的感觉。游戏角色上官婉儿从幕后来到台前，作为国内首个虚拟粤剧演员，在线下舞台通过全息投影真实演绎了《梁祝》经典选段回18，运用王者荣耀游戏和全息投影技术，开辟了传承新思路，试图打破传统粤剧产业壁垒。可见上海粤剧如今在守住传统戏曲艺术内涵的基础上，也很好地找到了与时尚与科技之间的契合点。粤剧的发展与上海纺织产业的转型是紧密联系的。粤剧这一移民文化与上海纺织业同为100年老产业，共同走向科技与时尚的新道路。站在今天， 回看粤剧发展历史，从浙江来到上海，从上海走向繁荣。
现在是2020年10月14日 ，M50 这个位于上海苏州河南岸的创意园区刚刚开始它的一天。园区并不大，却拥有自上世纪30年代至90年代各个历史时期的工业建筑50余幢，是目前苏州河畔保留最为完整的民族工业建筑遗存。上午10点，苏州河畔的 M50 迎来它第一批参观者。宣传墙上，不同艺术活动的海报更新几块，咖啡馆挂出它的招牌，桂花香和咖啡的香气在这里融合。新和旧，老上海和新上海，夏天和冬的汇聚，构成此刻的 M50。艺术、现代和商业逐渐成为这个网红打卡宠儿的关键词。时间回到50年前，这里的白天远比现在更长。这里原为近代徽商代表人物之一的周氏家庭企业信和纱厂，解放后更名为信和棉纺厂、上海第12毛纺织厂、上海春明粗纺厂。工人们往往起个大早，在车间的嗡鸣中开始一天的劳动。这里的故事被保存在距离 M50 500米的上海纺织博物馆内。纺织业，中国的母亲工业。整个19世纪，上海纺织工业见证着这座小渔村的发展。19世纪初，邻省浙江外来务工人员涌入上海，为纺织厂和染料厂工作，成为了一名名纺织厂间的工人。鼎盛时期，纺织员工高达55万。人员的流动和涌入不仅使上海的经济迈向高速发展，更带来文化的交融与碰撞。随着工人从浙江走到上海，粤剧也从他的故乡浙江嵊州走了出来。粤剧被称为中国歌剧，初始由嵊州地区的男性农民组成男班，一直到1924年冬天，女子粤剧创始人王金水带领女子戏班启程赶赴上海，在升平歌舞台挂出了绍兴文戏文武女班的牌子。尽管观众熙熙攘攘，但这次演出成为女子粤剧演员在上海的第一次亮相。短短4年，女班蜂拥来沪，女子粤剧的著名演员几乎都荟萃于上海。在歌舞升平的大上海，一些在沪的浙江纺织女工既是粤剧的观众，更是粤剧的支持者。80年代末90年代初，在纺织厂内掀起了一阵下岗再就业的改革，55万人面临再次择业的选择。在今天，我们很难将粤剧和纺织女工联系起来，但是在那个年代，在转岗的女工中，那批从浙江走出来的浙江女工选择了粤剧演员，粤剧也再次选择了这批坚韧自信的女演员。这是2020年的上海粤剧院，它成立于1955年，坐落在繁华的淮海中路。粤剧院并不大，排练厅外，绿荫树下的粤剧院的角角落落都藏着悠久而又辉煌的历史。走进粤剧院的排练厅，演员正在排练。 所谓台上1分钟，台下10年功。在这座极富历史的越剧院内，越剧在这里传承，也在这里发展。作为非物质文化遗产，越剧一方面在传承着世世代代越剧人的故事内核，另一方面，它也面临着和所有戏剧文化相同的窘境——观众的流失。近2年，越剧也正在尝试着破圈和跨界，来吸引更多年轻人关注到这个中国第2大剧种。2018年，上海越剧院尝试沉浸式越剧再生源，它突破了我演你看的台下台上方式，而是让观众和演员共享一个空间，演员穿梭于整个戏台，让观众近距离感受人物的悲欢。
梦丽。
到时候他会有这样的对他，他就说我，对吧？对。所以他为什么？
对你有跳起来。
我调整，我可能站不住。
半个月前，流行歌手周深和越剧演员毛维涛跨界合作越剧版《相思》，当日微博相关话题阅读量高达436.2万。越剧正在用融合的态度来拥抱观众，拥抱上海。
Well, I hope all of you have enjoyed this 2 short but quite succinct videos that tells the story of our project, but also summarizes the transitional point of China from industrial to post-industrial, from made to created in China. That process took place in early 2000. Before I have as I said earlier, the emphasis of our project is to introduce UK digital SMEs to the Chinese content world, and in particular art institutions such as Shanghai Yue Opera House and also the Textile Museum, to kind of link up with the opportunity of creating new content and searching for genuine partnership in not only entering the market but also to be able to knowledge transfer at a later stage. I think in lots of people throughout the past 2 days talk about challenges, and I think what I would say, apart from all the things mentioned about language and about culture and the discourse of Chinese opera, is a main challenge for our project. Chinese opera is very much a mistranslation in terms of concept and style, and took place in early 20th century with the rise of musical theatre in America and the newly introduced theatrical form of Chinese community in New York, and just before Mei Lanfang's extremely successful tour in the early 20th century. And Chinese opera was named as the other, conveniently grouped with the European high art and opera concept and practice. And since then, there has been a series of problems of how to define Chinese opera, or in Chinese terms, telling stories through singing and dance. So when we talk about Chinese opera from the Western point of view, they will all say what? And high art, nothing to do with us. And to the Chinese audience, the concept of opera is very, very alien. It is 戏曲, or just community, migrant and performing arts, and very much related to the low class and stratum, the textile factory workers, migrants, as I said earlier. So on that particular point, I think will be quite, it's what it also summarizes the essence of our project, Bridging the Gaps, and trying to bridge the gaps of mistranslation as well as misinterpretation over the past 1 century of unequal political and economic power. And in the process of developing genuine partnership through this series of wonderful HRC projects, we are just one of many. I think those kind of mistranslation, miscommunication can be clarified, and this is certainly the mission of our project. So we still retain the title of Chinese opera, because that has been kind of defined as what we the operatic or Chinese traditional theatrical form is, and in China we have over 300 different theatrical forms at different regions. But on that topic, I would like to move on to how that Chinese opera as a theme is seen as an opportunity, as well as some challenges, as we said earlier, but more so opportunity by SME digital companies in the UK. So apart from the existing digital companies we have already had, which are Invisible Flock, Human VR, developing app compatibility app games, and as well as online digital platform to link up the communities between rural and urban in preparation for the collaboration or digital connectivity between UK and China. What we also begin to formulate is another layer of audience. As we, in the past 2 days, we all emphasized the importance of urban middle-class audience and middle-class consumers, and those are the audience the new opera house fashion industry are targeting, both in China as well as in the UK. So this the audience, I think yesterday Professor Liu from Tongji University used the word 六娃, and I also used I used a different phrase called 宝妈, baby mother. Those are the new audience the Shanghai Yu Opera House is targeting. And then beside that, what we have discovered is actually 宝妈, they all spend a substantial amount of money and effort in education, children education. And what they have when they go to watch opera, in particular immersive theatre performance like the one Shanghai Yu Opera House has experimented, they also bring their children with them. And in the process, we begin to realize there is a massive opportunity for gaming industry, but through a genuine platform of understanding classic Chinese stories, Chinese opera, or storytelling through singing and dancing. And in that context, we formed further collaboration with Dubbit, a new partner, which will be signing contract in the near future. Dubbit, I don't know whether listeners are familiar with them. I will show some slides with you now and talk you through the company history and presence. Okay, so if we could see this the screen, Dubbit is very much the first the largest independent company, gaming company in the UK, is a Leeds-based digital company with 20 years of experience of research and digital consultancy, working exclusively with children and families. Dubbit is also the largest independent gaming company in the UK, with offices in the UK, in the USA, as well as in Australia. Research-wise, Dubbit has the largest global kids media and tech tracker. Their consultancy and product development is all research-led. Okay, if we move on to see, unfortunately, I don't play games and I'm not familiar with kids programs, but those are the key names, and I'm sure people with children will have heard of them. Games such as Puffing Rock, Almost Never, and they have been well received by the BBC and CBBC. So all these the games, Almost Never, which some of you are perhaps very familiar with through your children playing them, and the Puffing Rock. I could not pronounce this name, but Zajiel. Those are all very, very popular games, and Dubbit has developed over the past 20 years. But why Chinese opera? I think the interesting point I would like to bring, I think what I'm going to talk about will have relevance to SMEs, digital companies in the UK want to enter the Chinese market, and the miscommunication, but unexpected further opportunities from those kind of unexpected communication. Because when I first spoken with Dubbit, introduced our project, which is very much towards mid of this year. So our project had already developed shape and style. And when I introduced Chinese opera to them, what I said to them was, there is this story, there is this market base in China. And I'm going to show you a video called Love Liangzhu, or a story of love butterflies and story of the love butterflies. Very famous classic story, but also extremely famous in Shanghai Yue opera. It's about a female disguised in boy in order to obtain education in old, ancient China, and then fell in love with her fellow student, a boy. Only found out when she came home for her, and in defying of this system, her wedding day, ran to meet her deceased student and classmate, and whilst she was kneeling in front of the tomb, apparently heaven and earth moved to tears, and the tomb opened up. She jumped in, and later on 2 butterflies flew out. Since then, butterflies are symbol of loves in China, symbol of love in China, and it has resonated in children's classic literature as well as traditional stories for all ages. When I related this story to Dubbit, they were extremely quick in develop something based on their experience on, let's have a look, game platform. Their strength, Dubbit, apparently is to encourage children to design a game themselves. And then the children could, so any children with the platform they have can develop games themselves. And so they designed, for example, this meeting platform with Chinese kind of ritual ceremony platform as a visual image. And what they have suggested, according to the story baseline of Love of the Butterfly, is when Liang Shanbo and Zhu Yingtai are met, and there are many stories, many games and students and children can develop. And let me just show you the game ideas Dubbit wonderfully, ingeniously came up with. So for example, help Zhu Yingtai when she was in disguise and first met Liang Shanbo, when they first met and they didn't know each other, and they sworn brotherhood. So Zhu Yingtai was suggested to the student would find an incense for them, for them to swear brotherhood, and also to find the tomb for Liangshanbo, for Zhuyingtai, Liangshanbo's tomb for Zhuyingtai. So all these little games really contextualized the essence of the story. But what I want to say is a bit targeted when they made all this the game, the showcase. What I didn't know was they targeted at UK children that wanted to know about Chinese language, Chinese culture. And when we shared the story with our Chinese partners, the Chinese partners, without realizing what they just said, said, it's a great idea. Many of us are 宝妈, baby mother ourselves. If you launch this game in China, we will be the first to buy and we would market it for you. Because the Chinese government has always emphasized for children to learn traditional stories. That's particularly important. And since 2014, Xi Jinping has developed a cultural policy as the ideological guidance for cultural industries development. That is for children to learn traditional Chinese stories. But there's a twist here. They want to know the children's parents, as well as children themselves, want to learn English. So English language through Chinese content, and that'll be the perfect match. And that is the feedback from our partners in both art institutions as well as the 宝妈 children's treasure mummies. So I want to show you this demo to highlight the opportunities that SME companies do have in China as well as beyond China. The commonalities between the two countries, I think, needs to be emphasized rather than the challenges and difficulties. Of course, there are challenges, even if we work with, as researchers, with our local business partners, there are challenges. But I think there are lots of commonalities. From our project, Bridging the Gaps, at adult level, we identified the working class, migrant, gender, culture, and how that transitional point of industry to post-industry could facilitate the UK-China audience and have a common shared commonality of that period. And I'm sure if you have seen films like The Breast Off, and Full Monty, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. And those are the exact transitional period China went through, late 1990s, early 2000s. And so those commonalities are shared, and then the transformation of new audience development through new fashion and technology. So that is the base of the first level of Bridging the Gaps. And then, as I just shown to you, Dobit is the spin-off of what the common voice we have identified across the genuine working class or the new middle class, the industrial heritage side. The next generation or the children of that generation, they also can find shared commonalities to share stories, to tell stories, and to learn about each other. So I hope my talk has given you a summary of what we do through the project of M50 Newton project, and also building on that the rural urban migrant transitional Chinese and from made in China to created in China, and in particular new fashion technology, and how that project Bridging the Gaps in the process of identifying that narrative and introducing UK digital companies to the Chinese market and to the art institutions. Our aim is to form a cluster. We have this hub HRC is developing, which is wonderful. On our project, the vision from day one is to build a creative chain, but more importantly, a cluster to facilitate SMEs to enter China with the art institutions, both theatre and media museum, so that they're well supported, not only linguistically, structure-wise, and policy-wise, but also there's a funding. Funding is always available from different sides, but it's the support, it's the contact, and it's the knowledge, and from inside and from both sides, and that counts. That will develop, hopefully long-term, and I'm sure quite positive, will develop long-term sustainable collaboration between UK and China. So that's the summary of our project, Bridging the Gaps, and so far, and hopefully next year I will be able to tell you a bit more. Okay, thank you very much, and I would hand this over to Sylvia.
Thank you very much for the really wonderful talk and presentation, and this fantastic documentary and demos you have produced. So I think I have a question actually. While we wait for Q&As from the audience, I'm just going to use this opportunity to ask my own question. So if you have unlimited access to funding, what will be the one most urgent research question you really want to answer in the space of UK-China creative partnership building?
I think funding is always an issue. If the funding is limited, then sorry, you mean what kind of issues I want to tackle?
What will be like your burning kind of research question? If I have money, if money is not a problem, what will be the question you want to address?
Yeah, I think as a researcher, especially social scientist, I not only I was trained in Shanghai Yue opera or Chinese opera, or traditional theatre form. The other key important past history I didn't share with everybody, not because I'm hiding, but it's just there was so much to share. I did work in Shanghai, not textile factory, but Shanghai watch factory in the early 1990s, as an apprentice and then young worker for 2 years. And that was exactly the turning point in 1992 in the post-Tiananmen Square event. In 1992, Deng Xiaoping decided to really turn China from socialism to socialism with Chinese characteristics, or red capitalism. I think I experienced firsthand the pain of transition. To be laid off, and I was very fortunate. I was young. I was agile. I was able to move to opera houses to start my evening university education, but I witnessed so many people were laid off, in particular female under the age of 45. So my burning desire from that time onwards has always been to tell the story of the people I worked with, I lived with, and those people who the workers supported Chinese opera really is their soul. When I was talking to Director Jiang Guorong, director of the Shanghai Textile Factory, Textile Museum, what he said was 500,000 female workers were laid off in Shanghai Textile Factory alone. 500,000 laid off in the mid-1990s. And can you imagine the sheer despair? And opera, when Shanghai Yue opera went hand in hand to the lowest point in the late 1990s, and only to be picked up through the creative economy, digital industry in the early 2000s, and in particular 2010 onwards, when the Chinese government decided yes, we will further recognize the ICH, Intangible Cultural Heritage, in line with UNESCO's award, and recognize the genuine evolution of opera houses, as well as the working class, and the sustainable development for all class members. I think Xi Jinping put forward 2017 to address rural-urban balanced development, sustainable development. I think they are crucial. We should not just be blinded by the top cream of the middle class, which was only began to rise in early 2000. Of course, they're wonderful. Of course, they're important. But at the same time, if there's only one thing, I think my mission in life is I want to share the story of the people who don't have a voice, but they created wonderful. They're the backbone of China textile industry, Chinese industry, mother industry. and the development of the all-female Yue opera themselves and their story and how they have evolved today through digital technology. Sorry, that's a very long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah, no, that's a lovely story, and I like yeah, I was feeling sentimental about it because I think 下岗职工, those people who were laid off, at that early 90s, they were not really talked about that often nowadays anymore. They're kind of forgotten, a group of people, and we actually have comments from the audience. They're saying love hearing your personal story, your personal perspective, and after all, is a narrative actually need a perspective, otherwise that's how they actually stand. That's how they kind of hold together. I do have a question from the audience. I'm just going to read it out. Providing support to UK companies to collaborate is so important. When do you think the support hub will be up and running?
The support for UK companies to enter China, is that what the question is?
I'm not 100% clear. I think it's, yeah. Oh, so I have yes here from the, I think it's probably the hub where the opening session of today was talking about, where UKRI is looking at working with Bob VOP Consulting, trying to set up. I think that's what they meant, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think in the whilst now there's a much larger scaled hub to be developed by HRC, which I could not really comment on, but what I could comment on is the so-called cluster. Our vision of what our project can do to facilitate to give the support for the SMEs as well as UK companies and art institutions, and that is, I do think the physical support and the structure, the infrastructure. Now we talk about development infrastructure, is important and is crucial. If we didn't have the HRC series of projects and funding from 2016 strategically trying to develop collaboration with China, we would not have had the already existing infrastructure. We as a researcher would not have had the vision, or even with the vision would not have the opportunity to develop this research industry collaboration. And I think with the HRC pushing the whole thing forward, we already begin to see research industry collaboration, UK-China collaboration begin to form an infrastructure, a very solid structural support, which has got the knowledge. We're all researchers, and we all got a certain knowledge in certain areas of creative industries, and the ground level universities in China, which, as we discussed earlier, will have wonderful student support as well as researcher support. I think those are the foot soldiers. And then on top of that, we have creative industries in the UK has always supported and encouraged the collaboration with industry companies, not China. It took me a while to find this out, to encourage my Chinese research institutions to work with industry partners. I know Shanghai Theatre Academy walked forward in that area, and Professor Huang Changyong was one of the first set up the industry collaboration, but not that model was not replicated everywhere. But now we have the model. Now we have the basic infrastructure, we have the knowledge, and we have the funding, basic funding. I think what we really need and further support to the local companies and art institution or SME is a consistent kind of knowledge transfer to assist them to find their kind of matchmaker, their ideal partner, which would not compete with each other, but complementary to each other's knowledge and skill. Certainly for my project, when I select partners, and especially in the digital technology part, I'm very, very careful. So there's no competition, which is real, but we complement each other as well as the art institutions. So each of the companies do complement each other. I think with that support, things will happen. I hope that also I do apologize, another long-winded answer, but I hope that
it's excellent and very sort of empathic as well. So I just also want to bring in another question from the audience. I think everybody's very much touched by your research in bringing sort of urban and rural areas together and really creating a connection. So there's a question about what would be the equivalent of your project in the UK, if you're aware of any, which connects urban with rural, which is a big issue in the UK as well, particularly in the creative industry and in terms of accessibility, because the urban and rural division is really real in the UK. Do you have any insights on that front as well?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'll share an episode, a little story with you. In 2019, when the seed fund was received, I took a group of Leeds and Sheffield, White Rose-based companies, SMEs to China, and art institutions companies to China. And the first thing, after they have arrived in rural Shanghai, and I was told, my God, I brought my walking boots with me, because I thought I'm going to walk through the mountains and the hills in rural countryside. What they don't get,
no, it's different.
The perception, the scale of rural in Shanghai is actually very much cultural in this project. Actually, Pudong, which is the largest rural area we work with, is the new international financial capital of the world. So the sheer scale and the dynamics of the rural villages. I'll give you another example. Disneyland opened its latest site in Pudong. The site, one of the villages we are collaborating with. So that's the scale, that's the concept. But on that basis, I think rural and urban division is real. I have always emphasized, and we have a saying for Shanghainese, we have a saying, I'll say this in Chinese first, and then in English. 宁要浦西一张床，不要浦一间房. Yeah, what he's saying is from early on to this very day, well, maybe things have changed in the past 10 years, and you'd rather have one bed on the western side of Shanghai than a house on the eastern side of Shanghai. Pudong means eastern side of Shanghai. So the division, it only started in the 1990s, but the cultural difference between rural and the so-called rural and urban is real. The majority of the art institutions and art companies are located on the British, in particular French concession areas on the western bound. The eastern bound, people are reluctant to go there for any cultural events. People who are based there struggle to get the real sense of culture. They have the money. For Chinese people, it's not a matter of money, in particular tier 1 to 3 cities like Shanghai, but it's a habit. We're all habitual animals. So I think the UK-China audiences, rural and urban division, perhaps the physical division is less so, but cultural division, how to consume, what to consume, in particular digital technology, is real. And perhaps it's a habit we need to encourage people to grow, to love, like your karaoke session, which is great.
Thanks. Actually, we have no more questions from the audience for now, but I want to use the last 2 minutes to actually ask a question that for myself, if that's okay. So as an engineer, I am all about immersive technology and how we can use the technology to help creatives like you. So what's your perspective on that front? What's your experience so far working with people in sort of immersive technology sector, and how maybe can the two of us work together? What's your thoughts really on that for people like me?
Digital technology.
Immersive. So you are very much from the creative side, and I'm from the technical side. What are the challenges and opportunities and ways for us to work together, basically, is my question.
Yeah. No, I think that's a brilliant question. That actually summarizes our project and evolvement of our project. I'm not from a tech background. I'm so grateful to be able to obtain serious funding for the HRC project. And if I didn't have all these projects, I would not have been pushed to tech development and seek actively digital companies and VR now, like yourself. I think there's a genuine and real need for both sides to work together. Without you, I would not be able to realize the digital way of telling the traditional stories. It's just stories, how to tell the story. And without us, who performers and storytellers, perhaps you're just...
We don't have a story.
Chinese people are very, the research my PhD students have come up with is Chinese gaming consumers like the content more than UK consumers. So there is a consumer preference, but I would say if we can work together, that we can have magic results for both China, UK, and also within UK and China.
On that very positive note, I think it's my great pleasure to have you here as the final session of the Creative China. We'll let Haili go first, but I'll come back for wrap up as well. Thank you very much, Haili.